Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you all very much for coming. You never know when you agree to do these things whether anybody's going to show up, so believe me, I'm glad to see so many faces out there. My name is Grant Gibson. Amongst other things, I edit Crafts magazine, which you can buy in the shop downstairs. I'm not forcing you to, but I'm just saying consider it in our breaks. You've made a very good choice coming here today. We have a wonderful panel who I think are going to have an awful lot to say about the future of craft, the future of upholstery even. We have an hour to sort that out, guys, by the way, so think about what we're going to say. So on my right we have Gareth Rees, from the British School of Upholstery Furniture. Next we have Leigh-Anne Treadwell from the Bristol Upholstery Collective. I can't speak this morning, I was up very early, I do apologise. To my left I have Hannah Weston Smith, who is a traditional upholsterer from Lincolnshire. Next we have Louise, who is from the Shoreditch Design Rooms. And last but by no means least, we have Richard Ranklin, who is from the... Richard, where are you from? You're from the AMUSF, which, in its full term, is, I've got it on this side, because I looked it up this morning on the train, on the way up, the Association of Master Upholsterers and Soft Furnishers. There you go. Thank you very much. The format of the next hour is I'm going to ask the guys each to do a short kind of introduction to their practice and their work and their thoughts. We're then going to have a chat about upholstery, the state of the industry, tensions that exist within it. And then I'm keen that we get some questions from you guys, because frankly you're likely to know much more about this than I am. So I'm going to come out to you a bit like Jerry Springer with a microphone and shove it in your face and see if you've got anything to ask. So be prepared, is what I'm saying. Very good question. Before we get going, I would just like to know, it's a kind of game I play, well, with myself really, but it's also, it's good to know, so we know who we're talking to, who you guys are. Can I have a show of hands? Are you upholsterers? Smattering. Also, you're not sure. What are you? See, I was coming to students. Students! Yay, very enthusiastic. Well, okay, because you can put your hand up more than once, that's the important thing. People who, I don't know, need their chair upholstered and have come here to find out more. One. Okay, so everybody is going to get on your case afterwards, right? I don't know, anybody from health and safety who fancied a break in between poking about the cupboards? Oh, they're not here yet. Okay. Well, look, let's get going. I think, guys, if we can do a little introduction to yourselves, maybe Gareth, we start from you and we work our way this way. That would be the way forward. We are having to share microphones, so do bear with us if there's a short delay with anything. Okay, Gareth, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Gareth. I'm one of the principal directors of the British School of Upholstered Furniture. We only opened last October. I also teach at Shoreditch with Louise. I'm a practicing upholsterer of 23 years, and I started teaching about 2 years ago. Sorry. I've worked in small-scale production, design to go to production, mattress making, cabinet making, and traditional upholstery, and kind of specialising in traditional upholstery mainly over the last 18 years. And that's it, really.
Very good. Yeah. Get the microphone right to your mouth.
Hello. I'm Leigh-Anne. I am founder and director of Bristol Upholstery Collective. I have got an arts background, so for as long as I can remember, even in education, I've had an art studio and really loved and appreciate that kind of community of makers. So Bristol Upholstery Collective is a maker space that welcomes all to join in our passion for traditional upholstery or creative upholstery. We like to get a bit wild and colourful with it and keep it interesting and collaborate with artists, whilst also doing upholstery service and running leisure courses and really involving as many people as possible in various different ways to come and have a go and to also have their furniture reupholstered in a unique and bespoke way.
Very good.
Do you know?
That's perfect.
Hello, I'm Hannah, I'm the local. I'm based at Folkingham, which is about 8 miles from here. I've had a small workshop there for about 6 years now. My origins come from design. I did a furniture design degree and then went into teaching, taught design technology, but wanted to do something really more practical and something day-to-day basis, practical rather than teaching. So went to do a master's and then just found that upholstery was the thing that I loved. And now I specialise in traditional upholstery, and I'm passionate about maintaining the craft and the craft at a high level. This year I became a freeman of the livery company, so the worshipful company of Upholstered. And I just want to see what I can do to help the craft maintain high levels alongside my own business, which is Hannah and Nails.
Very good, Hannah. Louise, the floor is all yours.
Thanks. I'm Louise Boyland, as it happens.
Sorry, what did I say?
I can't remember.
Okay. I apologise.
No, that's right. I run Shoreditch Design Rooms, and along with a really, really great team of makers and teachers. And we have built up over the 5 years that we've been in existence a really big community of new upholsterers. And with it, we work with lots of other upholsterers as well. And our thing is all about the progress from becoming a new upholsterer and developing your experience, because that's what we all kind of need when we start, and that's what we're all aching to have. Dedicated to the trade, dedicated to excellence and quality, and that's what we're trying to, that's what we live for.
Thank you. I'm Richard Ranklin from the Association of Master Upholsterers and Soft Furniture, so probably the longest title here. Also, I think I've probably got 30 years on the rest of the panel, so I've got more to tell you about my background. But nevertheless, the association is a trade association that's been formed for many years, and it's really, I suppose, got two strands to its bow. A traditional trade association that provides services to members in all sorts of ways, technical helplines, but I think more perhaps relevant to today, and certainly what some of these guys are talking about, is the training. We have our own suite of qualifications that certainly two of the panel deliver in their centres. That's booming, we're delighted to say. Last year we issued over 250 qualifications around the country. It will be similar this year, but and so that's great. That's a growth area, and as we say to many people, the real difficulty now is the shortage of people to teach upholstery, but there is no shortage of people wanting to learn upholstery, and that's really good, and that's great that we're going forward. My background, I've been in furniture manufacture all my life. I started many years ago, and I'm not an upholsterer, probably one of the few in the room that isn't. I actually trained as a chair maker, and so without us chair makers, none of you would have a job. So just remember that as we go through the day. It's very important. But looking forward to the day, looking forward to meeting you, and hope we all gain something from this. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Richard. I first met Jude probably about 4 years ago at the Milan Furniture Fair, where there were a lot of chairs and quite a bit of upholstery. And she was doing very strange things to a Robin Day polyprop chair in the Vivian Westwood showroom, as I recall. And she told me about this idea she had for this show. And then in the years subsequent, we talked about it, we called each other and kept in contact. And then I first saw this show at the Jeffrey in London last year, during London Craft Week, and I thought it was by far and away the best show during the week. I love the fact that it's got this depth of knowledge and history, and also this extraordinary kind of new work. And I guess one would say that if you look at this show, you would suggest that the upholstery field, sector, whatever you want to call it, is in rude health. I wonder if that's the case. Maybe Richard, I'll come to you because you touched on this. What is the state of the industry, shall we call it, at this moment in time?
When we're looking at where we are, the craft industry, we believe, is in a very good state. And indeed, I said to someone earlier today, quite frankly, any upholsterer, working upholsterer who isn't busy, it's their own fault. There is bags of work out there, and it's developing all the time. More and more people, even if they're not getting involved in the craft, want to see their furniture or indeed any elements of their household restored and reused rather than just trotting down to the local retail park and buying new. It is true to say that the larger manufacturers who will be selling in the retail parks are still struggling, but we see no real hold up in the craft sector that I think most of us are involved in. We would say it's growing and going from strength to strength.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, we have some practitioners on the panel, obviously. Hannah, let me turn to you. Is this your experience? Are you rushed off your feet currently?
Do you want this one? Okay, you keep that.
Yes. I mean, my business started 6 years ago, and I have never had a day without work. I have, months in the book of people in, and I think Richard's right in saying that people want that choice, and they do want to keep what they have. And I often, when I speak to people and give them, say, a quotation, I will always say, look, I'll give you a quotation based on an average price of the fabric, and if you can find something in a shop that's of as good a quality of your furniture, which often is 10, 15, even 20 years old in terms of frame, if you can find it, then go ahead and buy it, but I don't think you will. And also, you'll be limited to your fabric, whereas, the sky's the limit, really, with what we can offer independently. And the service that you can also offer, which is definitely one-on-one. You go to people's houses, you can, you can get to know them almost. And I think that's a great part of the craft, and having that kind of one-on-one connection with your clients.
Louise, are you completely snowed under?
Yes, we're busy. We are always. I'm reflecting on what you're talking about, though, because there is really just to have a contentious angle, but there is the artisan versus the trade, or the craft versus a trade. And we have a furniture maker down the road from us, not an upholsterer, who deal in clean manufacturing, and it's these clean processes where you work out what the thing needs to cost and you work backwards. And although that doesn't allow you to be the artisan, it might allow that realistic prospect that I think a lot of trainers, a lot of new upholsterers are facing. How do I make a living out of this? Our particular dilemma is in London is the cost of workspace, absolutely. And then at that point, a lot of makers are bogged down with the business of selling or the business of business. And so there are pressures on people's time, in particular when you don't have space. I think if space isn't costing you every minute that it's sat there not being used, as in if it's not London, I don't know, or other urban spaces. Perhaps you've got big space in your back garden or something like that, then the pressure's off. But when it's costing you just to do nothing or meet with a client or something like that, then so it's a very real thing that we talk about a lot, and our answer to that is collectives, so people working together, and we're urgently trying to encourage our students, and they do get together and work together, and we're trying to do our best to set something up as well. So it's somewhat sponsored by you're a new upholsterer, and then you go on to be a proper.
So Louise is in Shoreditch, the middle of, achingly trained in Shoreditch, the middle of London. Is this you? You have a collective yourself. You're running this maker studio. I mean, is the pressures the same in Bristol, I wonder?
Bristol is it's quite a creative city. So there's maker spaces and art studios. The potential there for kind of independent makers to have their own products and sell is actually really welcomed there. It's really well supported in Bristol. But space is still an issue everywhere you go. It's really costly. The prices are going up, and the Bristol Upholstery Collective was set up to solve that first and foremost issue of space. I think I spent about 4 years banging on every single empty building in Bristol and wider areas. And then finally got this tiny little shop. Actually, it's not that big. And of course, upholstery, you've got so much stuff and stuffing and chairs and storing and products and everything. And so by teaming up, I thought, well, if I need space that's affordable and don't need 6 people with 6 machines, we can all share one. We're not all using them at the same time. We can share resources, we can share knowledge, we can share environment. Like, most people are working in isolation, I remember cutting some fabric on my bed once, because it was the only flat surface that I had as a cutting table, but cutting my bed sheet at the same time. Oh, so frustrating, this whole lack of space. And so actually, what it brings by teaming up and it completely meets a lot of those needs. It's amazing how quickly you outgrow more space. The more you have, the more you need.
Gareth, can I come to you? You set up the school last year, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. Why did you decide to set up the school, and what kind of people what are the expectations of the people, the first intake that you've had, I guess?
What do you mean in expectation?
I mean, are they wanting to go and become professionals? Are they doing it for themselves? What are they? Why are they enrolled in your college particularly?
Okay, so I set up the school with my partner, business partner Gregory, Cupid Jones. Some of you may know Hannah does, sure. We both worked for a long time, and Greg had taught for a number of years at university, teaching the AMU. I'd been teaching for Louise in Shoreditch, and we felt it was the right time for us to set a school up, because it's something that we always wanted to do. People apply to do the course for lots of reasons, to do the AMUSF diploma. Not everybody, it's a misconception that people see on social media and everything, that everybody that does the course wants to be an upholsterer and works in upholstery. There are people there that just want to learn a hobby and do it well. There are people who have a full-time job and can get one day off a week and learn something to do with their hands, because they're not doing anything creative in work. And then there are those that want to become an upholsterer at the end of the day. We're quite open with them at the start that we tell them you will not be an upholsterer by the end of your 3 years training with us. And we try to keep that open with them, and we know that they want to be, and there's this need to do something new and learn a new skill and earn some money from it, change their life. Most people are second careerists in this trade, in the AMUSF diploma. And a lot of them want to make a change, but we're quite open that you will not be fully trained at the end of it. You will have a basic understanding, a basic grounding to grow from that point. And I think this is what we try to install in them, and you need extra practice, you need more experience moving forward.
So for somebody who's unacquainted, uninitiated with this, are you saying that they have to find an apprenticeship, or they have to work on their own? How does that work if you're not fully trained?
Obviously, while training, we try to promote everybody to practice in their own time. We give them practice pieces to take home, other than things that are included in the syllabus. And it's every week or every other week there are things for them to do at home. Because they can't find spaces with upholsterers. Upholsterers don't want to take people on in general. We try and get placements for students, and we have 2 or 3. We've only got a very small school at the moment, it's our first year. And out of the 24 students, 3 of them have spaces with upholsterers, and we are constantly looking for that. And we want them to have this training. And moving on from the AMUSF, we advise they get more bench time and training. It's essential. If we look at, tell me if I'm wrong, Richard, how the AMUSF course started was where it came from the Rural Development Commission, and that kind of shut down. The kind of roots were there, wasn't it? And with Conservator earlier?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure. The story I was told when I came into the association was that effectively, because of City and Guilds was, of course, the qualification that everybody knew, everybody recognised. That was a sort of generic trade, craft training in any skill that you wanted. But I think we would describe it as having been dumbed down, which is a little unfair, because of course the City and Guilds needed to appeal to the masses, which was the volume manufacturers, and therefore the elements of traditional craft were gradually taken away from the City and Guilds qualification. So our qualification was developed with that. Yes, the people you mentioned have also been involved in the craft, the training, can't think of its proper name, but that's it, that they have been involved, but it's very much now really, we believe, the only comprehensive training that is out there for the traditional side as well as the modern side as well. But it's interesting what you said, Gareth, because all the centres will know, and those students amongst you know, that not everybody is going into the craft, but we still think it's great that people are coming along because they are still being taught. So if they're just coming along to do Granny's favourite chair, that's fine, because they have still got skills that are passed on that may then evolve in 10, 20 years' time into other aspects of craft and other aspects within upholstery. So, you know, there's space for everybody.
Well, I was going to ask that because if I was looking at the bios of the various makers and artists involved in this show, they seem to come from a wide variety of backgrounds. There's fashion, there's photography, there's 80s pop bands, which is kind of unusual. So can we talk a bit about roots in, and maybe your particular roots into this, and your backgrounds, where you came from, and how you ended up interested in upholstery in the first place?
I mean, I can talk about, because I have a lot of students, so I can talk about some of their roots in. What I try and say to people is that those diverse areas that they're coming from, we're actually just down the road from Liverpool Street, so we've got people who are lawyers or who are bankers or work in IT, but they've still got skills. If they're project managers, these are serious skills that you need to have to run an efficient workshop. If they're good with IT, well, that's great. Your online presence suddenly is taken care of and you're savvy with it. If you're an accountant, then guess what? You're going to be running that slick business. You're going to understand what's going on. So all of apart from the other, maybe more obvious links of the designers, the interior designers, and lots of textile designers actually that we get. And I think that what they find from the craft is that the hands-on I think is incredibly rewarding actually making furniture, and I wonder how people feel about it. Maybe I'm sure this is what happens for anything people get involved in, but I think it's creative. You get to use your hands, so it's incredibly practical, and the thing that you've got at the end of it is a seat, which is something that gets used largely and is very practical. I think it's really rewarding. And when I first trained, I sort of had a kind of apprenticeship, honorary, as in I wasn't paid, but I was lucky to spend 3 years with a very skilled upholsterer, and he still, after all those years, and he knew how to kind of like put it out there, he would still stand back from his work and go, look at that, that's good. He was satisfied in his work, do you know what I mean? And that, I remember thinking, yeah, that would be good to still be satisfied with your work after, 35 years and still loving it like that. And so, yes, I think that everybody brings, to come back to the point, everyone brings these different skill sets, and actually those different skill sets then are what's feeding back into when you start working as a group. Then you're all offering those different skills. You don't need one whole accountant, if that's your background skill, to run a one-man band upholstery business, but you might do with half an accountant. If there's 6 of you, that could be a really useful skill. And so for me, that's probably the future, which is very different to what it used to be. I think the upholsterer used to sit in their workshop and the work came to them because it wasn't a luxury choice, or it wasn't a choice actually, it was just like, oh, that is going to need fixing, I will go to the fixer to do that, and it would be the upholsterer in this case. So
how do you find your work? I noticed this bench project that you did in Shoreditch. Was that a method of maybe tell the audience about it who don't know, but also was that a method of getting people into the craft, I wonder, or getting them to know you?
It was a bit of both, but I think that it exposed us more to the people that want to learn about it. It was just really telling people that we were right there, because it's the bus stop over the road from our house.
Because if you could explain, if the audience who maybe don't know what it was that you did.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, we just revamp it every year and do it. So we built a bench that fixed perfectly to a wall that everyone sits on at the bus stops, so it's kind of like a very long kind of bench that everyone can sit on whilst waiting for the bus, and then a local coffee company, because we're in Shoreditch, so we all drink coffee as well. Like too much of it. They kind of handed out coffee, so it's just like this little experience. Obviously, it's shameless promotion, self-promotion, but the point was that it's, you know, it stood out. It made people think, and then they got to maybe think about who was there just over the road, and people are very surprised to discover that we've got 80, 90 students now in that building that come to us every week learning how to upholster. So it's quite a busy little event that's going on there. Yes, I think actually one of the things that I'm sure we'll get onto is, yes, here we are all being educated, but it's about educating the public as to what good quality actually is, and that is probably the future. You know, how does someone decide to come to you instead of go to somewhere and buy cheap furniture? How do they know what the difference is? And I'm sure we've all got plenty to say about what that is, but there is an education role, and actually for every upholsterer that we're training to go into the trade, we're training also members of the public that will go off and take that knowledge with themselves, but also to their friends. And when they're, oh, I've got a chair, we've all heard it a million times, I've got something you can do, a little sofa that I've got out the back, and telling them, yes, it's a significant job, but telling them that there's quality in your work and the reasons why. And that's an education piece that, as a bigger group, not these little collectives, but as a big group of people who work together, we need to start taking that message out to the public and working with different people to educate.
Okay, well that's interesting. I mean, Hannah, how do you go about educating your audience and persuading them that you know, it's worth the extra to use you as opposed to going to DFS or whatever?
Well, I mean, I think I touched on it earlier by giving people the option. But I do think, you know, people are quite perceptive about you, and I think, you know, it's when you're self-employed and you're a one-woman band, you have to sell yourself and your ability, and you have to be confident in what you can do and are doing. And as I say, I work by myself, and I'm slightly envious of these collectives because I went at it by myself, set up by myself. I am lucky that I have my workshop which I own, so I don't have that cost over my head. But in terms of you know, people choosing to go into it as a career, it is hard work, especially if you're setting up by yourself and you don't have all those multiple skills. You have to kind of work at it bit by bit and chip away at it, or find people that are willing to help you for free, because you know, you don't earn a lot of money doing it alone. It's definitely a way of life. It's definitely a choice. In terms of, you know, I was teaching before and I could have continued into that, and I did like it, but I just wanted to do something more practical. And as you said, you know, you can turn back at the end of the day and you're not looking at a computer where you've answered 400 emails. You're looking back at something and you've actually achieved. And I think that feel-good factor is definitely wanted now. And the fact that we have social media, I mean, that's been a saving grace really for me working by myself, because you are communicating with people with that passion, and you are learning from people, and you are, you know, talking to like-minded people, and I just think that's brilliant.
So what do you use, Hannah? Instagram, or which platforms are the most effective for what you're trying to do?
I mean, yeah, I think Instagram is brilliant because it's photographic. I don't have a work Facebook site, but I do use Instagram. I have a website. It's kind of just to the point, informative, and I do think it's all about being present, but at the same time, you know, I'm only one person and I can only do so much work at a time, which is probably why, you know, we're busy, but you have to take your time over it and people come to you slowly. I get kind of maybe 2 or 3 inquiries a week. My website is successful. I often get people commenting on it and it being informative, and I just think people have to look at it and feel like they're going to get their money and their value for money from what you're offering them, which is a bespoke service.
I mean, Leigh-Anne, can we go back a little bit to Roots In? because you come from a fine art background, I think I'm right in saying. And so what does that fine art background bring to your upholstery work, I wonder?
I've got a 3-year degree in taking criticism and being resourceful, which basically, you know, that kind of created that different approach, that different style, that look, about communicating messages. You know, you find in the art world that's what we all do, we're all, you know, having our experiences and conveying those in whatever way. And actually that's why a lot of my work tends to be focused on collaborating with artists, because I'm used to that community, and you know, that community within the art space itself, and then the kinds of people that we would design ideas with and bounce ideas. I love bouncing ideas. I love that thing when you go and you get that spark, and then someone else comes back, and I just love it. And so of course my route in was, I think I'd ended up managing an old jazz pub in Bristol. I may have torn apart all the seats, thinking it was going to be really easy just to put them back together. It's just a bit of fabric, stapling it on now. And then I realised that there's tricks to it, and I'd missed that. I'd fallen out of sync with my creativity of making things, and I just missed it so badly. So I went to a college, and actually, my original idea was that I would do millinery, like really big, bright, colourful, bonkers hats, and I'd be just some mad hat lady. And they weren't running that course, so I'm here because upholstery was on the agenda. And again, I started practicing in my own time. I got really hooked. I think I took apart more chairs than I actually put together because I couldn't afford to put them back together. And just learning from previous things and just getting really, I just dived straight in there. It was great. So, and then, you know, in the collective there are other members, there are resident upholsterers that we rent space to, so we share the cost of our premises. We also have a second venue now, which is a classroom in my office space, and we're in with woodworkers. And it's just really interesting to hear about how people have entered into this upholstery world. And something grips you, I think. I don't know what it is, somehow you stumble across it. And then the processes are really enchanting, and just what it does to you and how it feels. So therefore, another thing that I've been working on is a social enterprise that actually enables people to get some kind of focus away from depression and anxiety, and enjoy the process of making as a healing therapeutic practice. So it's just, I love it. Upholstery to me is a vehicle in which we can deliver such a wide impact on people, whether that's in their homes, on their lifestyles, on their choices of like where they buy their products and their consumer attitude. And again, which is another thing that's really kind of up and coming now, is people are recognising this. The throwaway society is becoming more and more of new materialism. People are sentimental and they're investing in their objects and they're taking pride in them, and so then also that spills into the craft economy, which we're all a part of. And you know, so people want to support, they want to shop local, they want to help that maker next door and support that family, put the food on the table rather than go to some, you know, sofa warehouse or something where you can buy probably 4 sofas for the price of just doing one. But yeah, it's great, different routes and attitudes.
Very good. One of the things, we reviewed the exhibition in the latest issue. I'm coming to you in a second, Gareth, don't worry. We reviewed the exhibition in the latest issue of the magazine, and Leslie Jackson, who did a very good job reviewing it, very much enjoyed the show. She did allude to the fact that there's very little on the kind of industrial side of upholstery. I know, Richard, you touched on this in your intro. But, I mean, are we saying, and this is really addressed to Richard and Gareth, are we saying that the industrial side of upholstery is bound to wither in this country?
I don't think it will wither, but we are all aware of all consumer goods now being found from the Far East purely because of a cost basis, and that's a fact of life, whether it's a 3-piece suite or a washing machine or a car or whatever, the economics don't allow that. I think it is interesting that I have a background in the volume manufacturing. I still have contact. There is more coming back into this country, particularly within furniture. You get it in the cabinets, because what they're finding is that they haven't got the control of the colour for polishing. And also then the same with upholstery. I know there are a number of situations where frames are coming back into this country because they can still make them cheaper in Poland, but we're upholstering them, and that's good. And you will see, even to the point where there are sewn covers coming in to be upholstered. So it's not withering, it's hugely decreased from what it has been over the last year, as with most volume manufacturing of any sort. But it's then important, obviously, that, as we've all said, that craft underneath it must flourish, because it will still come.
Gareth, do you have a take on this?
I agree with Richard. I think the mass manufacture of furniture will change. There will always be the need for it. What class is kind of small upholsterers working in small workshops would always be here. There's always that need for large-scale production. We won't get away from it in our lifetime.
I mean, is technology changing? Technology is changing the way manufacturing, furniture manufacturing is being made, where people can now buy a design online that gets sent to a local fab lab or fabricator and is made much more locally to them. Is that affecting what's happening in upholstery alongside the furniture, I wonder? Louise, you jumped on the mic then. I'm coming to you on that in that case.
Only that the likes of Made.com and there are actually quite a few, Swoon, and there are quite a few companies now that are selling two things. They're selling, we go to the artist and the maker and the this and the that, and they are, but it's brand, you know, they're a brand. They even talk about cutting out the middleman whilst being the middleman, but they're enabling, I don't know much about actually these processes, but they're enabling a maker. And certainly if you decided to make one nice design and make one nice product, you could presumably get and do it to a good price. You could get it on Made.com and they would do that. But when I started looking at some of these things, they've not been made locally either. You get the feeling like that you're speaking to an artisan down the road from you, but that's not quite the reality as far as I can tell. And so, I don't know. And then there's they're also promoting quality and things like that, and I think that different people have different opinions about exactly what that quality is, and I would also be interested to know what it's like being the maker in that scenario. Made.com turnover was 91 million last year, so that is not a small, that's not a small
It's
thing.
a business, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly, you know, but nonetheless that's quite significant. They lose, however, 30 million. So they're in competition. You know, if you want to be in any way in competition with these people that are selling an artisan type service, they're losing, what is that, a third or whatever at the moment, with a view to building up the business and selling it on at some point to someone. So it's not a fair market for sure. You know, however it goes. So you can't set your sights on all of this talk. About how you're going to contact an upholsterer or a maker. You have to stand there on your own 2 feet, look someone in the eye and sell your service. But when it comes to manufacturing, it seems like it's a brutal world. If Made are definitely losing, and I can also imagine that they are that probably their makers would do anything to get on that list, as they are for all the big companies. So there we go. We'll just.
Yeah, very good. Hannah, you were twitching for the microphone then.
Yeah, I mean, I think becomes a question with all of these companies online. It does come down to the quality of what is being produced, and it's almost on the lines of fashion. And I don't think for some of them, not picking any particular, the quality of the pieces and what they are selling, it's just not there. The quality of the fabrics that they put on them, what's in them. I mean, they're quite detailed in some of them, what's in them. And as an upholsterer, if you're recovering something, because it's worn out quite quickly, you see what's underneath, and for some of them, it's not good. I have a theory. It's called the deli theory. And it's like, as we have in supermarkets, and people go to the shelf and they go and buy a packet of ham, whereas you could go to the deli at the back and choose your ham, and it would probably cost the same price, a bit more, but the same price. And I think it's true in any industry, and certainly in the upholstery sector. You know, people can come to me, and I can probably make them something that's better quality than going into, say, any of the large shops, John Lewis or Ashley, for less, and I will feel like I've made something because it's worthwhile for me, and they feel like they've got something that's bespoke. And I think that's something that's worth promoting, because small people can be happy with their lot and with what they've earned. I don't want to earn £91 million, but you're going from your house to me. We're making it with, we find local craftspeople to do it. It's fully bespoke, and you get something that's, you know, individual. And I think that's something that does get lost even with these big companies, even though they have some fantastic styles and ideas that you can take from.
Okay.
I changed tack slightly. I was at a bit like this. I was at a clay conference on Monday and Tuesday in York. And there was much kind of renting of hair and beating of breasts about higher education, and the fact that I think the statistic being bandied about was in 1995 there were 29 dedicated courses to ceramic in higher education. There are now 3. I'm wondering how important, because most of you guys are involved in some way, shape or form in teaching and education. I'm wondering how important higher education is to the upholstery field. Richard, should I go to you on that?
Not entirely sure where you think higher education starts. Certainly, when we look at the progression of training, apprentice training, unfortunately, now has just almost fallen out of contention completely. Although there are strong moves to try and bring that back. Unfortunately, of course, it's again geared at the volume manufacturers, because that's where the number of people will turn up. So apprentice training. When you get to higher education, there is a lot of courses, I think, that will offer design, but it won't be just furniture. It will be a fairly generic design course that will cover ceramics, glass, furniture, textiles. So there isn't the dedication now that we saw perhaps 15, 20 years ago for our craft, for our industry. And it tends to be, you know, those people who do want to go on further probably are developing themselves and doing it for themselves and working, as a lot of these guys have done and a lot of these people out here would have done, to develop their own skills through experience. It's not always about hanging a certificate on the wall.
Yes.
No, it's interesting. It seems to me that actually what's happening is likely to become a model for other crafts that have been more reliant on by higher education. I mean, you know, from universities. It seems to me that most of you guys are doing it for yourselves. If that makes any sense. Gareth, I don't know if, because you run the school. I don't know if you want to pick up on that quickly, and I'm going to throw. Then people, I'm going to throw the microphone as far as it'll extend. It's a very long cable. I've been reassured. I'm going to come out and see if there are any questions. So have a think while Gareth's answering.
I think the last university course stopped about a year and a half ago, didn't it, in High Wycombe? That still included upholstery as a definite, traditional upholstery as a definite part of the course. And there were lots of reasons why they closed the course in High Wycombe. And we have the AMUSF course that a lot of us run. But that isn't how most people get into the industry. Most people get into the industry in far various ways. They may come in very young as a trainee. When we look at the factories, and I've worked in a couple of places around High Wycombe, and what you find is that the men that work in the factories, they will then go and work for smaller people, or they will start working on their own, and then they will start doing more traditional work, because they've worked in the factory doing modern, they don't know anything about traditional, and then they start up on their own, and then they start learning. There is a skill shortage there, obviously. Higher education, it was a shame that the High Wycombe course stopped, because most of my peers and friends went through university in some way, learning restoration and the trade. And then they went on to work for other people before starting up on their own, like you did. And it was a given thing that, you know, your tutors would say to you, you need to go out and get work, you need to go out and get work, and then you would move on. I mean, it's just a shame that that stopped. What we also find is that these people that come from more mass production industry, and they come into the traditional side of craft, there is a skill shortage there. And there are plenty of upholsterers out there that advertise that do modern and traditional. And they may have learnt off their boss, who has learnt off his boss before him. And there hasn't been this apprenticeship or this training given by the person above you. And they've learnt on the job, and there's a watering down of skills going through. And we see that all the time. And we say that the AMUSF is, you know, the only real training in upholstery now, especially traditional upholstery in the UK. But what happens when you leave? Okay. Yes, some training facilities will offer you support, but you haven't got that peer-to-peer learning that you learn in a work environment. Okay. You need more tutoring as you go on. And this is what university courses and apprenticeship schemes gave you. Okay, they gave you that workshop experience. So without the universities and those apprentice schemes, we're left with, I think, the AMUSF producing small cottage industries of people who haven't, you may have collectives and people help each other, but they haven't got that peer-to-peer system of people saying, that's wrong, we need to do that again, that's wrong, do it again. And as upholsterers have been in the trade a while, and I haven't been in the trade that long, I've been in the trade like 23 years, we're often called the old fart brigade, because we're not supportive of younger people. They think, when we say you need more experience, okay, it's not that we're being cruel, it's not that they're being undermining what you have learned, okay, it's because they're using their own experience to say, if I look back where I was 3 years into training and working 3 years, and I look at where I am now, 15 years down the line, I didn't know very much. And I think... No, go on.
I was just going to say, both Gareth and I are members of the Guild of Traditional Upholsterers, which is actually, it's quite a small group of people. And we try to get more people involved because basically it's a passionate group of people who want to maintain a really high skill level. And in fact, to become a full member, you have to take an exam. You have to prove that you can practically do a traditional piece and have the knowledge, historical knowledge and knowledge of processes, materials, to be part of that. And we try and get more people in, and often the comeback is, well, it's a bit elitist. Now, I think that's often shown as something that's negative, but actually, I think you need that. You need that level, like you have with anything. You need that experience level. You need that quality level, because if that falters, then you know the whole level, the whole quality down dissipates, and you know, at a very basic level, it won't be good enough quality. And I think it'd be great if we could get more people involved in something like the Guild, because it is I suppose it is an elite group, but it's an elite group for a purpose, and that is maintaining the craft.
I am a student rep of the Guild, and if anybody wants to join as a student member, it's free. And we are in talks to help people as they progress with possible mentorship with Guild members around the country.
Very good. I'm keen to get you guys involved. Do we have any questions? Oh, right at the back. That's going to test the length of this table. Oh, you are. Very good.
If you could let us know who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
Probably an upholsterer, I'm guessing, but you know, never know.
Yeah, I'm a student upholsterer. I actually study with Louise, and I also work at school. And we just basically heard that yes, there aren't apprenticeships, yes, there aren't kind of further education, which as a student makes you a bit nervous about going out there. So what piece of advice would each of you give to somebody, given that those things aren't available?
Should we start with Richard?
I think the advice is that really keep at it. We know there are limitations, that there are no higher education, there are no apprentices. The majority of people who we see coming into the craft sector, the bespoke sector, are following the path that many of you here have followed. You've come to it as a second career, you've come to it maybe later in life. It's just a case of continuing to practice. As I say, it's not about certificates on the wall, it's about getting out there, getting yourself known, being comfortable with what you're doing, being proud of what you're doing, and going on from there.
Very good. Louise, piece of advice?
Yeah, there's a great deal of resource out there, but the one thing there isn't is somewhat a pair of eyes looking over you all the time, like it would have been if you were an apprentice, and that would have been 7 years. So no one's investing in that. You know, it's to become a beginner. It's not government money. When I trained, that's exactly how the upholsterer I trained with and all of his network got into it. And then they left. And then they went off, like it was a big story. They all came from the London School of Furniture. Then they all got apprenticeships. They were gifted all of those apprenticeships, and then they went off and set up their own workshops, and they were incredibly successful for 20 years. So the story has changed. It will have to look like something else. You will have to find people that will give you advice, and some of those people will be peers, and I don't think you should devalue the information, help, advice, overseeing that you can actually get from your peers. I know they haven't got like that 35 years of experience. They are still valuable overseers of what you're doing, and you still have been given good knowledge by your training. So I don't want you to feel devalued by your training. It's it will set you up and allow you to proceed. And you just have to reach out and find as many people out there that will be prepared to advise you when you need it.
I would follow on from that by saying, all of us are here for a reason, and it's because we're like-minded. Yeah. And a key thing for me would be find like-minded people and embrace travelling and meeting new people. I mean, I was massively lucky. I went for my masters and had a spare day, and I thought, well, I'd like to try upholstery, and I worked with Greg, and he took me on. He just said, stay with me, and I was so lucky to have him because he's very, very good at his job, and he's a very good teacher, and he took me under his wing. I learnt with him, I worked alongside him, and then I went it alone. Now, going it alone, it wasn't easy, and on reflection after 6 years, I would not do it again. But I'm happy, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I think that's the key thing. But I'm surround myself with like-minded people. I joined the guild, I joined delivery, I keep in contact with people through social media, and it's so important because there are people out there. The key thing for this is, though, you have to be able to take criticism. It's not the emperor's new clothes. You can't just, it's amazing. You have to be allowed for someone to turn around and go, you know what, you could have done that better, because we are always learning. We've always got to improve, and you've always got to feel that what you are sending out is the best you can do. And in fact, if there's a niggle about something you haven't quite done right, it's only in your head, but it's good to have it because it means you're maintaining a level, and that continues.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. That's exciting. What do you guys?
I would say get yourself some space, get yourself some time, and your crew. It's definitely all about having those people around you. At Bristol Upholstery Collective, on a Monday night, we have Upholstery Club, which operates very much like a gym membership, where people that have done a bit of training, leisure courses and things, and have kind of felt this, draw and passion to the upholstery process. We've got our bookshelves, we've got videos, they're exchanging knowledge, and it's just kind of playing with ideas and asking of each other, and what would you do in this situation? How would that be? So I think it's really good to provide that right kind of space that empowers you to just pursue your passion. You'll do it.
Gareth. Any thoughts?
I think when I was at university, I'd worked as an upholsterer for a few years beforehand as a trainee. I went to university to get a degree, and I needed to work alongside being at university, being a student. And I found that people were phoning up trying to get work, and everyone was just putting the phone down on me. So I just got on my feet and I knocked on doors, and I did anything that I could to get a job. And I had a job within a quarter of an hour of knocking on doors around Wycombe. And it's don't give up. You know, there are these opportunities out there, but there are opportunities out there, don't get me wrong. They're not forthcoming and freely given. Okay, you have to show that you want to do it, that you want to learn. You know, I just took some pictures of some work I'd done. You know, I paid very little, and it's just keep at it, practice as much as you can, and like you say, make connections. What can I say?
Be proactive and show passion.
Yep.
Now, there was a second hand up earlier. Is there another question? Oh, yes, okay, we've got one here.
Just trying to formulate it in my head because now it's actually Nuiqsut keeping me up. So I totally agree with you, Gareth, in terms of the quality of the work and having someone oversee what you do and what have you. I guess it's like a couple of pronged questions in that we see a lot of collectives kind of springing up, and we see people like the Ministry of Upholstery in Manchester, but they kind of govern themselves, and they have their own course that they do that isn't affiliated to the Guild or to the AMU. Like, who should be in charge to oversee the quality of the work? And as a student or someone kind of learning, like, who is it I should go to, or how would they support me in the future, or what is their role? What should we be doing? And I think try and get the questions out there.
Who would like to pick that up? Is that one for you, Richard? I wonder. You're going to say you, right?
Well, yes, of course, obviously, join the AMU because you will get accreditation, and so that's one of the key elements that our members do use. We don't hear from, 90% of our members. Their comfort factor is having the background facilities if they're needed, but mainly being able to demonstrate that at some point in their path they have been visited and accredited by somebody from the AMUSF, so they can display the crest. So there is that accreditation. But yes, it's very difficult. You know, the majority of our members will say that they get most of their work through word of mouth. Very, very few actually advertise because, as we all know, if you get a good piece of work, you'll tell, 2 people. If you get a bad piece of work, you tell 20 people. So it is word of mouth. It's very difficult. You're right, Hannah. There is no sort of one central piece of accreditation that anyone could get, but the AMU is not a bad one.
Any more questions? Yes, coming to you. If you let us know who you are, that would be great.
Talk right into that one.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a student at London Met, and my question isn't people related, it's more environmental related. And as an industry, actually globally at the moment there's a big plastic-free movement, and how does our industry future-proof itself against foam?
I cover that one. I mean,
Go on,
obviously we're most of us go down the traditional route, and it's all about reusing and recycling. I mean, if you've got hair in a piece, you can actually reuse it, you can recard it. I agree with you about this issue with plastic. I hate having to use foam. I have angry days when I'm using foam because it's toxic. We take things apart and we have to wear masks. It falls to dust, especially the old stuff. And I think there's a massive question there because, as Gareth said, we're not going to get away from mass-produced manufactured furniture because people are going to keep buying it, whatever the quality. But it's petroleum-based and it's toxic and it's not very nice. But I don't know what the other answers are. I know that there are soy alternatives, but then there's always questions on for that, and the expense and the cost, and at a high, at mass manufacture level, the cost of what people are prepared to pay for furniture. Foam is the answer, and plastic webbing and all that kind of thing. And I think it's actually about re-educating people about what things really cost and why you pay that little bit more for your products. Because it is not very nice, and sofas that are cheap don't last very long, and they end up in the tips.
Have you seen the panel discussion from the last second sitters?
No.
I would suggest going onto YouTube, searching second sitters, because they discuss sustainability and the use of phones.
Can I comment on that?
Would you like microphone? Can everybody hear you? Oh, the microphone.
So, as someone who, picking up on something earlier as well about higher education, until last year I worked for London Met, I would have been your technicians, which Vanessa is now in that role very nicely. But as a technician at London Met, I was in quite an interesting position in that I worked with the upholsterers, but I also worked with the design students and I worked with the furniture makers. And the furniture makers do very little upholstery, yet they did a project with Park Knoll. Now Park Knoll is upholstered furniture, but not once did anyone come and speak to me about how to upholster something. So, I think it's part of the education side of it, and especially part of the sustainability side of it, is that we have to, or do we, as upholsterers, have to get into HE? Do we have to get into those furniture making courses and sort of say, okay, we need to teach, the students that there are other alternatives? I went to a panel discussion at SCP last London Craft Week, and it was called designing. It was about upholstery, wasn't it? It was like designing upholstery. Upholstery was in the title. There wasn't one upholsterer on the panel, and every person on the panel admitted to designing a chair without knowing anything about upholstery. So I find that.
The trouble is, furniture courses themselves are closing down. I mean, you used to go to Royal College and there'd be rooms of furniture, and now there's virtually nothing, for instance. Otherwise, has anybody got any other questions?
Grant,
Yes.
could I just pick up one point on, let's say, environmental matters and furniture in general?
Absolutely.
Plastics, of course, has got quite a big publicity at the moment for all sorts of reasons, quite correctly. It's actually the chemicals in FR treatment that you are more likely to hear in the next year or two as being the subject of debate, because the fire regulations are currently with the government for review, and it's something that post-Grenfell is becoming more and more an issue for them. So it's more likely FR chemicals than plastics that will impact on furniture.
Gareth, very quickly, so I'm keen to get another question if I can.
Just want to add to the whole upholsterers working with designers and the whole sustainability thing. About 2 months ago, Greg and I spent a short amount of time in Sweden looking at upholstery in degree courses in upholstery and how they offer the courses. And we spent a day or so at the Carl Malmsted School of Furniture Studies. And this is something that small kind of diplomas like we offer can't really do because of time constraints. But at the beginning of the year, all the furniture studies, everybody works together the first half of the semester. Design students, cabinet makers, upholsterers, and they do everything. And as they go on, they are promoted and encouraged to work together through a design process the whole way through. And it was enlightening to see, because it was something that I haven't seen in the university in the UK. And we spent some time in universities in France as well, and we haven't seen it there either. So it is doable, but it's about education.
We are overrun, but can I just take one question before one question?
Grant, this lady here has been very keen to...
Coming towards you at the front, that means I've gone from back to front, which is ideal.
I'm Chan from... I'm retired. To get used to saying that. But I used to be a university lecturer at the Institute of Education in London. I'm really interested in the whole progression, if you like, from primary through secondary into higher education, and the place that design technology hasn't had in the curriculum, and the way in which we have children who are coming through school who have very little experience in terms of technical skills in being able to handle materials and tools, and teachers not having the expertise to be able to, and of course schools not having the money to have, as in Sweden, you'll have a whole woodworking room, and I'm really keen to get this this notion of how rewarding making something is, and the practical skills that need a lot of hard work for you to become an expert in them, and how we nurture that in young children who perhaps don't see the point in trying to try hard at something and don't necessarily get encouraged or have the time at home to be speculative in doing that. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are in terms of progression through education from primary, how we can perhaps enforce that in the curriculum and promote it.
Did everybody catch that at the back? Progression through education, lack of materials in primary schools, etc., etc. Does anybody want to take that? Hannah, look at you, hand up.
It's a problem. I was a design technology teacher for a short time. I say I did enjoy it, but I wanted to do the practical thing. And what I found in the very short time I was teaching, which was just shy of 3 years, that just the money wasn't there. And it was it's easy to give an English department books, whereas the technology department needs tools, it needs lots of materials which are thrown away essentially. It's the consumables that are there, and it is a problem at lower level. I mean, I'm actually taking a work experience child next week from a local school, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. What I found as a teacher, certainly teaching mainly boys actually at GCSE level, is that a lot of them are held back through paperwork. And it's all because they have to check boxes, they have to be proven, there's this coursework. And I taught boys that were practically fantastic. And you could see that they were capable, and they would be capable in the future, but they weren't getting the grades they needed to get further because there was this paperwork and they just didn't want to do it. And I think we need to get almost back on to the hands-on apprenticeship. I understand there has to be a little bit of, the paperwork, and you have to do certain things. But I think the problem with the practical side is that paperwork gets in the way for that.
Louise?
In agreement with all of that stuff, but there's another issue as well about if there's barely enough money to keep a hospital or just to keep a school going, then it is likely that this is not going to come as an institutionalised resource. Therefore, this community that's sat here and the wider community, all of the work that the AMUSF has done to support upholsterers and training, it's going to have to come from there. And unless we actually start working together, shoring each other up, reassuring each other, providing each other with the space and the time and the encouragement, but innovative and new, because actually there's loads of good things going on, but actually we need to forge ahead in some of these things. Working with other makers, you'll have to make it happen. Working with, and this is the big thing that stopped happening, I think, a couple of generations of upholsterers stopped taking people on. And what we have to do, because we're that generation now, it has to be your priority. If you need to start saving now so that you can spend on someone that's going to cost you a bit of money for a year or so, in a few years' time, then do it. You've got to work it into your plan if you're going to be responsible, because otherwise all the work that's being done here is just wasted going forward. Someone's got to do something, and if you're either going to ask what the government, or you've got to do it yourself, one way or another.
I can take one more question. You'll have to look straight up, so it's coming towards you.
Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm studying at the moment. Just going back to what you were saying, just in terms of teaching other people, particularly youngsters and things like that. Looking here as well, we've got lots of funding in Arts Council England. I kind of know from the music industry that there's a lot of money and funds available for businesses or for arts grants, but it's really difficult. It's quite hidden. How you get them funds, how you access them, what you can use them for. And so far, I've been doing this for a few months now, I haven't really seen that side of it in terms of upholstery. Is that something that you guys have experienced, and how we can use that to help our own businesses, but also educate people?
So funding pockets of public money, fundamentally. Does anyone want to take that particularly?
I'm not hugely knowledgeable about it, but maybe some people are, but I have sought. I've gone down those avenues, and it doesn't seem widely available. And there are niche groups and support, and I also taught at Wandsworth Prison, and that was sponsored by the charity Find Cell Work, as well as Wandsworth Prison itself at the time. And so there are these niche areas, but that's perhaps not changing the trade. And in actual fact, a lot of that support is on the therapeutic side, valuable as it is. And it is valuable actually, because I think what we're saying is using your hands, even if you're not going to become an upholsterer. It's such an important thing to do in life, to touch things and to make things. But it's not that sexy, so we're not getting musicians getting behind except for Jack White was a musician, so maybe there's like something on there. But you know, you're not getting big names in the industry getting behind like a program. But
the first show that we did, you know, the first thing that we did was we approached the industry, the heritage crafts and, you know, views with fabric companies and upholstery companies, but we got nothing. So we had to go down the Arts Council funding route because that's where we got the money. Yeah. So maybe the industry needs to kind of become more responsible as well.
Yeah.
That's how I ended up at the School for Social Entrepreneurs, because they had a grant mentoring scheme that would help people that trying to do the more therapeutic side of things. There wasn't the funding available, so you have to go down that social entrepreneurial route, which is also a really good route. Take it but yeah, there's no funding.
Okay, I'm inclined to wrap this up. Is that okay? I'm getting on. Okay. All right, Gareth.
Sorry.
The floor's yours. You have the final word.
We've looked into the funding, and we've looked into funding for under 18-year-olds. The problem we've had, and we've had a couple of under 18-year-olds that want to come and study with us, but they have this 12 hours a week, the minimum of 12 hours a week that the under 18s have to do in education, and the fact that it's privately funded. And if it was a recognised diploma, government recognised diploma, we could get funding for it. We also almost went down the route of actually just offering the space for nothing for these people to do it, because they're 16, 17, they can't afford to do this course. It's a luxury to do this course. So we've been offering bursaries for people who can't afford it, and there's a bursary on every one of our courses. But we want younger people coming in if we can, and we cannot get them in. And this has to come from government, and I'm hoping at some point the AMUSF diploma will be a recognised, maybe NVQ, and I know that's a long slog, which Richard could probably tell you about, but as soon as it is, we could get funding and get younger people in, and as you, maybe not as young as primary school, but starting from a younger age, using our hands.
Two very quick then, perhaps I've got the last word. First of all, Gareth's right, we would love to get the AMUSF recognised and therefore allow funding. We have been working with an organisation which is called Trailblazers, which is developing apprenticeships for the furniture industry, and we're hoping to get a traditional upholstery element within that. So there will be a small window of opportunity. But the other thing on a more national basis is that many of you would have heard about the introduction of the apprenticeship fund, which larger companies have to pay. We are working with all the other trade associations within the industry to find out how we can best get some of that money channeled into the furniture industry. Now, it's fair to say that probably not a lot would come to the craft sector, but nevertheless, even if it's training other furniture makers in other organisations, that all helps. But yeah, money's always a problem.
I am going to wrap it up here, guys. I'm sure the guys are going to be here for the rest of the day. You can approach them with questions or anything you might want to know. But in the meanwhile, you can say thank you to the microphones getting everywhere, but thank you to Louise, to Richard, to Hannah, to Leigh-Anne and Gareth. Guys, thank you very much.